In 1978, Robert Burns and his two sons illegally dumped 31,000 gallons of contaminated oil laced with polychlorinated biphenyls, also known as PCBs, along 240 miles of roadsides in 14 North Carolina counties. The state of North Carolina had to decide where to put the PCB-contaminated soil. Told by the EPA that they could not treat the soil, North Carolina had to place it in a landfill. In 1978, North Carolina purchased 142 acres of land in Afton, Warren County, North Carolina. They had an option to purchase another 250 acres. As soon as the community discovered the land purchase, organizers began hosting community meetings. At a public hearing in 1979, citizens took the microphone. They worried about leaks in the landfill lining. They fretted over potentially devastating economic effects of the landfill. They were afraid that Warren County would become a large toxic waste dumping ground. According to Dolly Burwell, the Register of Deeds at the time, people, including her own child Kim, actually thought that once the PCBs were put in Warren County, the people would immediately start dying from cancer. Despite community concern, in 1979, the EPA informed Warren County about their approval to place the contaminated soil in a landfill there. Residents of Warren County were outraged. They believed that Warren County had been chosen because it was largely a poor black community. In 1980, Warren County's population of 16,232 was 64% people of color, and 30% of the population lived below the poverty line. Warren County had only one black elected official, no pediatricians, and no hospitals. The county filed a lawsuit against the state to prevent the landfill.
At the time of the hearing, the county government compromised with the state government that if they would give back to the county 120 of those acres and not exercise the option to purchase the other 250 acres, then the county government would voluntarily withdraw their lawsuit.
Another lawsuit brought by the citizens was dismissed. On September 15, 1982, trucks filled with the PCB-contaminated soil headed towards the landfill. At precisely 9:15 in the morning, 200 people began the mile walk from Coley Springs Church to the landfill entrance. Along the way, protesters, young and old, black and white, chanted, "The people united will never be defeated." Using civil disobedience tactics, the protesters lay down in front of the landfill, preventing any trucks from passing. By the end of the day, there were 67 arrests. 46 truckloads of contaminated soil had been dumped at the landfill, and Warren County was thrust into the national news when Dan Rather of CBS began reporting. Daily protests of approximately 75 protesters continued for 7 weeks, and modeling the infamous Selma to Montgomery March, citizens staged a 60-mile overnight march from Warren County to the state capital of North Carolina, Raleigh. When the media lost interest, activists planned Outside Agitator Day. Walter Fauntroy, a delegate of Congress, joined the protesters, and he was arrested. Not surprisingly, the arrest of a congressman got the media to return. More importantly, Fauntroy was so angered by the injustice he perceived that he solicited the General Accounting Office, the GAO, to investigate the siting of hazardous waste dumps. By November 6, 1982, the trucks had finished delivering 40,000 tons of contaminated soil, 7,097 truckloads, to what locals called Hunt's Dump. There had been 410 arrests, 269 from Warren County, 124 from other parts of North Carolina, and 17 from outside the state. The State Highway Patrol had clocked 38,892 person-hours, ensuring the trucks reached the site. It seemed the citizens of Warren County had lost their battle, but they had not given up their fight. Activists believed that there was no place for compromise.
Communities should not be compromising on contaminants that are going to kill them. If a company is producing poisons, it ought to be required to take care of the poisons on site. They should not be shipped into communities. They should not be shipped through communities.
The steadfastness of citizens, community leaders, and civil rights organizations in Warren County did convince the state to compromise. In a letter to Warren County, Governor Hunt said,
"The state is convinced on the basis of the best scientific evidence that is available to us that the landfill is safe and will remain safe in the future. But you and I have seen that scientists can disagree, and their disagreements concern us. That is why I intend to see that the state of North Carolina keeps its commitment to you, your children, and your grandchildren to continue to press for detoxification of the site, to closely monitor it, and guarantee its safety for generations to come.
Citizens continued to fight. Ken Ferruccio, Patricia Hubbard, and Rufus Harris were arrested again on February 28, 1983, for protesting water buildup in the landfill. Several days later, they were arrested again, and Ferruccio went on a 19-day hunger strike. On the national front, Warren County had prompted several studies. In 1983, the GAO issued a full report on the dumping of hazardous waste in poor or colored communities, stating that 3 of the 4 landfills studied were placed in poor black communities. As a member of the UCC Commission for Racial Justice, Benjamin Chavis, also a North Carolinian and leader involved in the protests, ordered a study to determine the extent of the crisis. The UCC study found that race was the best indicator of the location of hazardous waste sites in the United States, and in 3 out of every 5 African American and Hispanic Americans lived near toxic waste sites. Making national news, Chavis called this environmental racism. 10 years passed. Then in 1993, the community believed that 1 million gallons of water were at the bottom of the landfill, and they called the governor.
People of Warren County sent a letter to him and said, Governor Hunt, do you remember your promise to us?
The state proposed a plan to install a new pump or ship the contaminated soil to Alabama. Although the citizens had originally sought to have the contaminated soil placed somewhere else, the GAO study and the UCC study convinced them that burdening another poor community of color was not the best solution. Instead, they asked that Governor Hunt keep his promise by cleaning it up on site. According to Mike Kelly from the state of North Carolina,
we're talking about spending a lot of money. And we're talking about from a scientific standpoint, the landfill itself was not leaking, it was not causing a problem, and probably never would cause a problem.
Although not required by law and not believed by the state to be scientifically necessary, in 1993 the state created a working group to determine how to clean up the landfill. What followed was 10 years of negotiation between the citizens of Warren County and the state of North Carolina.
One of the things that we did as a compromise was, with some of the initial money we got, was to allow the working group to hire 2 science advisors.
After many similar compromises, the state broke ground for cleanup in 2001. Soil treatment began in 2002 and finished in 2003. On-site detoxification was complete 22 years after the original construction. 81,623 tons of soil were treated, and 3,000 gallons of oil were incinerated.
So in the end, the state ended up having to compromise and spend nearly $20 million to correct the injustice that they had foisted on that community back in the early 80s.
If the state hadn't compromised with the citizens to say that if and when technology became feasible, that they would detoxify or clean up the landfill, then we would not have had the landfill cleaned today.
I'm pleased that we finally have cleaned up this site. It's all gone from Warren County.
Today, new laws prohibit landfills within 24 miles of the old PCB landfill, and new landfill applications must include socioeconomic information. Warren County citizens have attained some level of justice. Warren County is a story of white and black, science and policy, young and old, environmental organizations and civil rights organizations, state government and local government, right and wrong, conflict and compromise. Thanks to the citizens of Warren County, more and more people and organizations are fighting for environmental justice to be sure that environmental burdens are not placed only in poor minority communities. President Clinton signed an executive order on environmental justice, and there are now over 400 environmental justice organizations in the U.S. Organizations like the UCC continue to study environmental burdens, race, and socioeconomic status. Dolly Burwell and the citizens of Warren County raised national awareness of the environmental burdens placed on poor minority communities. They taught us all about how to peacefully protest, how to fight tenaciously for what is right, how to negotiate with government, and they taught us all that there's a time and a place for compromise.